So this morning session is going to be relatively short. This has been requested by kind of quite a few people, and it's how to lay out a face correctly. It's a really simple sort of technique. This, but it's well worth learning. Some of you might already know this. Some of you maybe not. When I was in school, I was originally taught the wrong way to lay out a face. We were taught, I still remember it because I'm kind of not agreeing at all the way it was taught. We were taught to split the head into 3 equal parts. Problem is, when you do that, you end up with your eyes way too high. It's all weirdly sort of spaced out. When to lay our face out sort of correctly, you use something really nice and simple, and we call it the half rule. So we're going to start off sketching the shape of a head. Yours doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine. It can be an oval, it can be a circle, but a rough kind of shape of your head. And then to use the half rule, we find the space halfway between here and here. So right bang in the middle, and we just jot in a little guideline for now. So halfway between there and there is our first guideline. Then continuing with the half rule, we go halfway between this guideline and the bottom for our next guideline, and then one more halfway between this line and the bottom is our next guideline. And then actually we can add one more in just for today, and this is halfway between either side, so straight down the middle. Let's just put a guideline in there as well. Now this center line is actually called the sight line, and we'll get onto that a little bit more in another session. It's a really useful thing. It's the line that runs right down the center of your face. So when you learn to use that in different ways, you can make your characters look in all sorts of different directions, which is quite cool. But just for today, we're going to use this just to separate up the face. Now, these lines tell us where we need to put stuff. So let's extend them a little bit. So this first line that you're drawing is our eye line. This next line you put in is our nose line, and this third one is our mouth line. Now, your eye line might look like it's a little bit sort of too low because it's halfway between kind of the top and the bottom. And a lot of the time when people start drawing without drawing in guidelines, they automatically put the eyes kind of quite high up. But if you look at the person sat in the room with you, look in the mirror, look at the very top of your head and look at the bottom of your chin, and look at where your eyes are, and they're pretty much smack bang in the middle, halfway between the top and the bottom. They're not quite as high as you think. So all the interesting stuff that goes on your head, your face, is kind of in the bottom half. The rest of the stuff up here, it's all forehead and hair, and there's not really a lot of interesting stuff going on. So when you're talking to people, you look at their face. So these are the bits you pay attention to. You kind of forget about all this stuff up here. But in fact, your eye line is pretty much in the middle of your face. Now, it's worth sort of saying now that there are other slightly different ways to do this, slightly more complicated ones. This is the absolute most simple way of learning to lay out a face. So anybody just starting drawing, for the young kids kind of joining in on these lessons, this is the most simple way you can do it. And then in another session, I might show you some of the more complicated stuff on how to form noses better, that kind of stuff. But this is just to get your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your ears, your neck, all that kind of stuff in the right place. So we're going to go to our eye line first of all. So your eyes need to touch that line. So they need to either be smack bang on the line, slightly above it with the bottom touching, slightly below it with the top touching. It's those tiny, tiny differences that make you all look different. So everybody's made up of pretty much the same ingredients. It's eyes, nose, mouth, ears, head, hair, all that stuff. It's the same ingredients, but you all look totally different because of these tiny, tiny little changes, little differences. So choose where you want to put your eyes. Let's put an eye there, put an eye there, Let's quickly put some pupils on. We're not going to worry today about too much detail on this. The next line, we have our nose, and again, your nose needs to be touching that line, so slightly above it, slightly below it, smack bang on it, as long as your nose is touching that line. And we're not going to draw in the whole nose, so what we're not going to do is something like this, because that's not what noses do. So your nose kind of blends in at the sides. Now, if you turn to the side, there is that harsh line, the straight line of the nose, but from the front, your nose sort of blends in backwards. So there isn't these kind of harsh lines that you get. But what we are going to do is this bottom bit, which is your nostril, a little bit underneath, and your nostril on the other side. Okay, so that's what we want to be touching this line. There we go. And then we're going to suggest the shadow. So instead of these harsh lines on the side of the nose, because unless your nose is kind of made out of plastic and stuck on the front of your face, you're not going to have these really harsh lines. But just in here, in your eye socket, it is going to catch the shadow. So we're going to suggest that by putting it on just one side. And that's enough. Your eye just sort of fills in the rest of the detail for you. You don't need to put all this detail in. The mouth, we're going to go for the same sort of idea. Your mouth has to be touching this line, so it might be slightly above it, slightly below it. But the shape we're going to go for the mouth is we're going to do the little dip, which is this little dip on your top lip, and then our bottom lip we're going to draw like this. So your bottom lip sticks out from your face. It's like a little shelf, which means it tends to catch a shadow underneath it. And that's exactly what this bit is. This is a little shadow. Now, if you draw your lips on like this, it's going to look like you've got lipstick on. And that's not really what we want. We want something a little bit more subtle with this. We just want this, the top lip with the shadow underneath. Okay, so again, touching this line, let's do the top lip, shadow underneath, and you have your lip. Now, this half rule also helps us draw a couple of other bits and pieces on our face. Now, these are guides, remember? So these tell us roughly where your ears are. So your eye line and your nose line tell us roughly where your ears are. Now, again, your ears might be slightly bigger, they might be slightly smaller, they might stick out a little bit more, might be a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but they're not up here, they're not down here, they're roughly between the eye and the nose line. So we're just going to just put some ears on there, either side. Not going to do any real detail on, just stick those on quickly, okay? Remember, this is about getting the proportions right. This isn't about getting the actual really fine details right today. And this is most of the layout for the face that you need. This kind of is almost there. But the other thing that these lines do, it also helps us draw in a neck. Now, one of the other things that when people start drawing is, so here's our head. We've got our eyes on, got a little mouth on, so then all of a sudden it will come to drawing a neck on, and you do something like that, and your head's going to fall off. Your neck has to be really strong. That's how it keeps your head up. There's a lot of weight up here, so your neck, you can sort of see from here. My neck is almost as thick as my head. It's much thicker than you sort of first think, really. So by using the bottom of the ears, so our nose line, we can actually draw in where our neck is. Now, you want to be coming in ever so slightly, but that sort of tells us where our neck is. Now, when you first do this, it looks a little bit weird, okay? There's a good reason for that, that's because we don't have the shoulders on. So your neck looks a bit odd without shoulders. But this is why it's so important to follow along these rules and to sort of trust the rules. So, because once you put these in, all you need to do is put your shoulders on. Okay, put a t-shirt on, and it makes sense. Okay, so the neck looks really odd to begin with until you put your shoulders on, and then actually, yeah, that works. it's why you need to trust these rules when you sort of first put it in your guidelines. And your eye line is the most important rule to trust initially, because a lot of people, when I've shown them this, once they know that this middle line is an eye line, they're like, they kind of start to sneak it up here, and then this bit becomes way bigger than this bit, and then that just doesn't work. Okay, your eye line has to be halfway between the top and the bottom of your face, otherwise everything else goes wrong. Now once you've got these on, you can sketch in little eyebrows if you want to. Add those in. We can put on our hairline, so your hair is all up here. Your hair actually comes down sort of in front of your ears a little bit as well. It might even come out the back a bit. Hair doesn't just sit on top like that, unless you've got a really terrible hairstyle. It grows out away from the head a little bit, slightly behind the ears, slightly in front of the ears. Let's just draw that really quickly. And you have your face, and the face is laid out pretty much perfectly every single time just by following this half rule. Now once you've done this, you can sort of play about with it a bit. So if you want to make your character look older, it's a case of kind of putting in extra creases and things. And this is where, if you try and put too much detail on your face, you can accidentally make your characters look really old. But you can do it deliberately as well. So a couple of little creases on the side of the nose, crease on the top of the lip, a couple of creases on the forehead. Go for some down there, a couple on the cheek, a couple on the chin, a couple more creases on the neck. It starts to look a bit older. In fact, I want to make it look even older. So I'm going to put a few more lines on, a few more wrinkles. There you go. And you've got a much older looking character. It's why if you try and put into a lot of detail in, if you accidentally put detail in, you can make your characters look older than you want them to. If you leave the face kind of nice and smooth, then your character is going to look younger. So that's kind of it. This is kind of the first thing to practice. In another session, possibly tomorrow, I'm going to show you how to use this sight line a little bit better. So this sight line, the central line down here, once you start moving it to the side, this means you can do some quite cool stuff where faces are looking in different directions. Okay, or you can have faces that are looking upwards. Okay, so this sight line and the central line can be used for different bits and pieces. This I'm going to show you in another lesson. For now, I just want you to practice using this half rule. So remember, you've got your basic shape of your head. Don't worry about making it too perfect. If it's a little bit round, a little bit long, it makes no difference really. The most important line is halfway between the top and the bottom, your first guideline. You have to get that halfway between the top and the bottom, and then halfway between that line and the next, halfway between that line, next, and then halfway down the middle. And that gives you your grid for drawing all your different facial features. And you can do this for females, you can do it for males, you can do it for young, you can do it for old. It makes no real difference. Okay, you can start adding in details if you want. You can add in a bit of mustaches and beards, all of this stuff. You can kind of just go to town with it, add in any details you like. You can do 1,000 different characters, but that basic sort of format for getting the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, the ears, and the neck in the right place is all based on this half rule. So have fun. experiment a little bit, see what you come up with. I'd love to see some of your drawings once they're done. As always, send them through. Really like to see them. And I will see you all again tomorrow.